Mourning is the price we pay for having the courage to love others. Even in grief, we know that the wonder of human life is too complex and too magnificent to be memorialized in endless pain. The gifts of spirit our loved ones gave us cannot be measured or weighed, nor can they be lost or even tarnished by time. Even in our darkest hours, we know that some of their light and their warmth will always be with us, bringing comfort and courage, and in the fullness of time, healing and peace. With God as my shepherd, I shall not want. The Eternal makes me lie down in green pastures, leads me beside the still waters, restores my soul, guides me in straight paths for the sake of God's name. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You have anointed my head with oil. My cup overflows. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Eternal forever. I'm going to turn to Psalm 121. I'll read it first in English and then in Hebrew. It's called A Song for Ascents. I turn my eyes to the mountains, from where will my help come? Where will my help come? My help comes from Adonai, maker of heaven and earth. God will not let your foot give way. Your guardian will not slumber. See, the guardian of Israel neither slumbers nor sleeps. Adonai is your guardian. Adonai is your protection at your right hand. By day the sun will not strike you, nor the moon by night. Adonai will guard you from all harm. God will guard your life, and Adonai will guard your going and coming now and forever. Esainai el harim meyayin yavo Ezri mihim Adonai ose shamayim mi'aretz al yitein lamod raglecha al yanum shomrecha hine lo yanum v'lo yishan shomer Yisrael Adonai shomerecha Adonai tzilchad yad yemimecha Yomam shemesh lo yakeka Vayareach baleya Adonai yishmacha b'chol yaram yishmor et nafshecha Adonai yishmar tzedkecha uvohecha me'ata v'yad olam. Shalom, I'm Rabbi Alan Finkel, and I'm honored to lead this service on behalf of the Werier family, as an era ends with the passing of Ettie Werier, the daughter of Max Rubenfield and Annie Rubenfield, née Mandel, known in Hebrew as Esther bat Aharon Yechiel Dechana. Ettie's life journey ended peacefully in her sleep at around 2 a.m. early last Friday, July 25th, 2025, which we will mark on the Hebrew calendar as the 29th day of Tammuz in the year 5785. She was 96 years old. Ettie had always wished that she could die peacefully in her sleep, and this was to be her destiny, living her life fully engaged in good health and very much connected to her family and the world around her, right to when she lay down for her last sleep, last Thursday evening. The previous Saturday, she was FaceTiming with her son Cliff in Calgary, as she did every week. On Sunday, she was FaceTiming with her son Carrie in London, as she did every week. And on Wednesday, her second last full day, she was FaceTiming with her daughter, Jody. On Thursday, her last day, she was playing Rummy Cube on the balcony with her caregiver and dear friend Tess, with her only symptoms over the past 2 weeks being a bit of nausea and less interest in food. Thursday evening, Ettie and Tess watched Netflix. And then before Ettie went to bed, there was a bit of a shift. She told Tess that she prayed this would be her last night, where she might finally pass away in her sleep. She was becoming tired, and this is what she'd always said she wanted, and this came to be. In many ways, her passing was sudden, but also quiet and easy, maybe a gift to herself and to us for a life well lived. Her daughter Jody noted that her mom was ready to leave, but she herself was not ready for this to happen. Ettie had suffered 3 serious losses within her family, and each had diminished her mom. First, her grandson Cody 5 years ago, with whom she had a deep, deep bond. Then her sister and best friend Shaarey of a year and a half ago. And finally, last November, her husband of almost 76 years, Lawrence, after his overly long bout with dementia. Soon after, Jody says her mom started to bounce back, almost thriving again and becoming fully engaged, and Jody only wishes that her mom had more time to be more of the best of herself. With Ettie's passing, we mark her place within the lineage of her family. She was predeceased by her parents, Max and Annie, as well as her grandson, Kobe, and she's survived by her younger brother, Jack Rubenfeld, who lives in Vancouver and is joining us online on our live stream. She also leaves behind her 3 children and their families, Harry and his wife, Suzanne, who reside in London, England, Clifford Werier and his wife, Sabrina, who from Calgary, and Jody and her husband, Mike, who live in Vancouver, and as well her 2 granddaughters, Cynthia and her partner, Max Kennedy, and Alex. And I'm especially grateful for the long visit we had yesterday with all of Ettie's family, 10 of us in a room, talking about her and unraveling in the most loving ways a woman who's very private in her feelings and who went directly from her parents' home into a marriage in an era where her roles were very much defined by the community around her. As we talked, we discovered that she was just like all of us, impacted by our childhood homes and the times in which we live, by our life experiences and the challenges presented to us, and that Ettie, just like all of us, always tried to do her best. And so it was that stories were shared about the many chapters of Ettie's life as a young girl, as a wife, as a mother, as a grandmother, and then the golden years when Ettie and Lawrence became empty nesters, followed by the later years when Lawrence's decline became a new reality and opened up yet another chapter. And this is the moment at Eulogy, while we are still in Ettie's presence, where we begin to tell the stories of her life and create the memories that we will carry forward. The opportunity for us to come to appreciate that she has not only left a mark on those who knew her, but how, in her own way, she in turn has made a mark on the world in ways that we may never have imagined. Yesterday, we talked about how she, like every one of us, presented herself to the world as a jewel with many facets, that each of us might only see 1 or 2 of those facets of the jewel. But as we each share our own stories about her, we discover there's so much more about Ettie Werier to be discovered and to be cherished and to be loved and missed. Cliff, I invite you to speak.
A eulogy usually begins with the facts, where someone was born, grew up, got married, as a narrative of a life is constructed and shared. And I will do some of that today, as Mum lived for 96 years and accumulated many experiences along the way. But I would rather start with an image, the memory of my mum's beautiful face lit up with happiness, and the times we have all enjoyed her smile, or her laugh, or her look of concentration as she considered the next card she would play. Our mother had a very expressive face. When she enjoyed something, she could light up her room. And when she was miserable, you could read it clearly, immediately. So on this day of sadness and remembrance as we say goodbye, I choose to begin with the memory of Mum's glowing presence when she was happy and the sweetness of her smile. Mum had a kind of quiet charisma. She was never the flashiest person in the room, but everyone who came into contact with her was impressed by something that perhaps they couldn't put their finger on. Maybe it was the mischievous sparkle in her eye or some droll bit of storytelling, but everyone here knows what I'm talking about, as we were all attracted to her goodness, kindness, and wit. At the same time, there was something almost mysterious about her inner life, as she didn't share often what she was feeling, unless it was to express love to her family, especially to her grandchildren. Ettie Werier was born in Poland in 1928 and came to Canada at the age of 3, narrowly missing the Holocaust. And her family grew up very poor. A few years ago, Jody and I drove with her to the North End on a guided tour of the old neighborhood. I particularly remember the rundown building that housed the little store where the Rubenfield family lived and worked on Alfred Avenue. Our mother's first language was Yiddish, of course, and we heard it constantly spoken throughout our childhood, as Mum would talk on the phone every day to her mother and sister Shaarey. I was always self-conscious of my mother's name, Ettie, because it didn't sound like the names of my other friends' mothers. Dad's name for her, of course, was Eddie, which was not much better in my childhood mind. As who calls a woman Eddie? But Mum didn't really care. Eddie, Ettie, or even Ed or Edward, as Dad liked to call her. Later, of course, I found it amusing, as her name was part of her charm. She came from a humble background with a traditional religious upbringing. The fact that she was attracted to Dad, who, while Jewish, came from a much more business-oriented world, and didn't even keep kosher, tells you something important about her. Mum obviously wanted a more adventurous and secular life. Otherwise, she would not have chosen Lawrence Werier to be her beloved husband of more than 75 years, because, as we know, he was always unconventional, but somehow this fit her perfectly. Many children of mothers who grew up in more traditional times, when women were expected to stay home and have kids, wonder what their mothers would have made of their lives if they had the opportunity to have both family and career. Dad used to like to tell the story of our mother leaving her job at Buffalo Cap and how they had to hire 2 women to replace her because she was so good at what she did. I do not remember Mum being particularly happy at home, taking care of 3 bright and unruly children, often doing much of the parenting solo, as Dad worked late and then began to travel for months at a time in Asia. Of course, it's impossible for adult kids to really understand how their parents coped, but Mum was on her own for long periods, and I imagine that it was both isolating and difficult. On the other hand, once we were launched, she surprised everyone by taking up tennis at the age of 50 and becoming an accomplished player. I remember visiting during these years, and Mum took me out to the tennis court and beat me soundly and had me running around the court chasing balls that she hit with force and precision. Our Mum, playing tennis. I couldn't believe it. This little woman, barely 5 feet tall and not exactly known for her athleticism, could whack a tennis ball down the line with intensity. Was our mother competitive? Always. Whether she was playing bridge or poker or tennis or rummy cube, she liked to win. Mum and Dad were a great team. Many times she would subtly roll her eyes as she put up with yet another repeated story or grandiose gesture proffered by our not-so-subtle Dad. And yet she also got a kick out of him and showed tremendous devotion as he faded into dementia. They traveled the world together, beginning with their honeymoon in Acapulco when it was still a newly developed place that few had visited. But Dad liked to go off the beaten track, and she joined him in this pursuit, whether in China, Hong Kong, Mexico, Venezuela, Europe, and even the Philippines. I don't know whether Mum's memory for names, faces, and stories is common knowledge, but she never forgot a face and was always up on the gossip. Dad, who had blindness for faces even before his dementia, counted on her to remember who was present, and she performed this task with almost supernatural powers. Even in her 90s, she could name everyone in a room and tell the names, ages, and locations of their children. And of course, she never missed sending out birthday and anniversary cards and checks, which always arrived on time. She was such a great storyteller. With a black coffee in one hand and a moon cookie in the other, she would share the scoop on all of her friends and their kids' accomplishments. We looked forward to these moments of catching up because Mum told her stories with so much animation and humor. And let's not forget Mum's great sense of style. She always looked understated and elegant without the need for makeup, in a beautiful sweater or coordinated outfit. Not fussy or show-offy, but effortlessly put together. As Mum and Dad aged, they moved into the house on Park Place West, along with their dog Tiger. Here they enjoyed regular visits from children living in London, Calgary, and Vancouver, Carrie, Cliff, and Jody, and their spouses, Suzanne, Sabrina, and Michael. Mum was a wonderful grandmother to Cynthia, Alex, and Kobe, and later she welcomed Cynthia's fiancé, Matt, into the family. Of course, the loss of Kobe, her beloved grandson, was painful and difficult beyond words. They continued to have an active life until the years of Dad's diminished cognition, where she suffered along with him, but never left his side. On the days when he refused to get out of bed, or eat, or became difficult, she felt his losses as if they were her own. When Tess came into our life, and they eventually moved into the Shaftesbury, things changed for the better. Mum now had support, had an ally to help, someone who grew to love both Mum and Dad deeply, and who is now a part of our family. When Dad died in November, Tess stayed on to be Mum's companion and helper, and the bond between them was deepened over the last few months. Tess became Mum's social convener as well as caregiver, as the last few months were full of activities, whether she was in morning exercise class or playing cards with her friends. Tess was there from morning to night, helping and laughing and enjoying Mum's company as she enjoyed and loved Tess's. It's difficult for everyone when children are far away, but we always went to bed confident that our Mum was receiving the best care ever, and probably staying up too late watching Turkish soap operas with Tess. Because we didn't live in Winnipeg, we had to rely on friends and family to check in on Mum from time to time. We appreciate especially Rick Mayhew's continued love and support, and many others who are here today who made visits, especially after Dad died. She always had amazing friends, especially those in her many bridge groups, and over the course of a couple of years, she built a community at the Shaftesbury. Fortunately, she was never afraid of technology, as she could read our emails and accept our FaceTimes, which kept us close despite the distances. Likewise, she spent hours playing online bridge, which supplemented her usual routine of reading in her recliner. And I think we can all see her sitting in that recliner. In fact, trips to the library were a regular feature of our childhood, because Mum was such a dedicated reader. As I draw this to a close, I want to especially acknowledge her surviving brother, our dear Uncle Jack Rubenfield. Okay, this is where I'm going to lose it. Who is very much like Mum, and is someone we all love and admire, and I hope he is able to see the live stream this afternoon. Mum will be missed because she was graceful, funny, smart, kind, and loving, which is something we all strive for, isn't it? To pass from this world and leave behind loving feelings in the hearts of all who were fortunate to know us, whether friends, relatives, children, or grandchildren. So let's hang on to this happy image, the memory of our Mum, Ettie Werier, smiling over her cards as she calculates yet another brilliant move.
I'd like now to add other voices to Cliff's extraordinary words that he offered as the voice of Eddie's 3 children, to introduce more facets of that jewel. I will start with her granddaughters, Cynthia and Alex. Living in Calgary, they saw their grandma every summer growing up and described a fantastic relationship with her. Eddie was always so excited to see her grandchildren. And she loved telling stories about the Winnipeg Jewish community and who was related to who and what was going on here, even though they didn't have a clue about who she was talking about. Cynthia remembers the small outings, and she still has a skirt that her grandma bought for her when she was 13 years old. And then there were the full family reunions in Mexico and the Caribbean, entirely paid for by Lawrence and Ettie, and how Ettie could always be found tanning on a sunbed reading a book, and how she would readily put down her books so she could tell her grandchildren even more stories, and always with joy. And Alex added more about how her grandma was always supportive, was always non-judgmental, and never lost her temper. But there was a special face, and the whole family broke out laughing when Alex mentioned it. There was a very specific face that her grandma would make when there was something she didn't like. And that opened up other memories, especially Ettie being the master of the Jewish shrug that she had apparently protected to an art form. It was kind of interesting to watch the family all going through variations of that yesterday. And then there are stories told by Mike and Sabrina and Suzanne, all who married into the family, which brought Ettie into their lives as a mother-in-law, and the remarkable similarities in these stories. Michael, described how Ettie was very generous, very loving, and never interfering. And he recalled a story of how important those family reunions were to her. How in 1999, the night before the entire family was to fly to Cozumel, she had mistaken the downstairs steps for the washroom. She tumbled down those stairs and broke both hands. She was in surgery as the flight took off, immediately ignored doctor's orders to join them 2 days later with surgical plates in their hands, and greeted everyone with that renowned smile on her face. Sabrina had known Ettie now for 38 years and found Ettie immediately accepting her into the family. And she was always kind and generous. She had a sense of humor as she told jokes about Winnipeg. And the birth of her grandchildren was a huge thing, and how she delighted in time with them, especially when they were younger. And Sabrina also describes how Ettie was attentive when she visited, being careful not to stay too long for fear of overstaying her welcome. And then there's Suzanne, who loved having Ettie as her mother-in-law, and how she sees many subtle hints of her in her husband, Carey, which I should say really caught Carey by surprise. And I'm not going to imagine the conversations that are going to follow about that one. She loved Eddie's sense of style and noted that Eddie's welcome into the family showed more with action than in words. As she put it, she loved me because I loved Carey, and I gave her son my heart. And Matt is the newest member of the family, now engaged to Cynthia, and he had words to offer as well about her kindness and her smile, and making it clear how much she loved her granddaughter and asking him to always take care of her. And after today, there will be so many stories to tell, beyond those being told here at Graveside. The people with whom she played tennis, or bridge, or in Leisureland in Mesa, Arizona, or the social world she inhabited here in Winnipeg, or those she met on her travels around the world with Lawrence, or the many friends she had wherever she lived, in River Heights, at Park Place West, and at the Shaftesbury. And of course, there will always be that quiet and lovely chapter dedicated to Tess, who became Eddie's constant companion over the past 5 years, something that evolved from a care relationship into a deeply caring two-way friendship that was truly a gift to them both. So these are the stories so far, and I hope that you will all continue to tell these stories and to recognize the many obvious and subtle ways that Ettie Werier made a mark in this world, and how she shaped the values of her children, all fine human beings who carry all of her kind and inviting and open-minded values into their relationships, and have passed them on to their children as well, and most likely into their own worlds far, far away from Winnipeg. And then she offered herself those same things to the rest of the world as well. And so I offer these final words about Ettie Werier, Esther Bat Aharon Yechiel B'chana. May her name and memory always be for a blessing. Can you hear what's on? May it be God's will. We'll be concluding this part of the service shortly with the El Mali Rachamim in both Hebrew and in English, and I'll be concluding our service here at Graveside. Immediately following, the family would like to invite you all to join them for a meal of consolation, which will take place at the Shaftesbury, at 905 Shaftesbury, on the second floor in the library. The family also invites you to visit them tomorrow afternoon for Shiva. It's Wednesday afternoon, again at the Shaftesbury Library from 2 to 4 p.m. And as you know, Jewish tradition encourages us to honor the memories of those who passed. Our tradition says that every time you pass on the donation, you move them closer to Gan Eden. So there's a beautiful theory behind that thing. And the family simply asks that you choose a charity of your choice. The family does have an endowment fund at the Jewish Foundation, but please just go to the places you feel most comfortable. May the source of life, the fountain of all being, open our hearts to compassion and our eyes to wisdom, that we might glimpse in perfect peace and sadness the way of all things. May Ettie's memory be for us a blessing, and may we never let the light of her love grow dim in our hearts. May we remember all her worthy and righteous deeds, that her memory be forever bound up in the bond of life. God is our source and our destination, our beginning and our end. May Ettie Werier's death awaken us to this truth, that the bond of love we shared and share not be severed in sorrow. May she rest in peace. And let us say, Amen. El Mali Rachamim, Shochein Bamromim, Hamitzei Menucha Nechona, Tachat Kanfei Ashkina, Im Kiroshim Utuharim, Bizahar, Harakeya Mazhirim, Et Nishmat Esther Bat Aron Yichel B'chana, Shalcha La'olama, Baal HaRachamim, Yastireha B'seter B'chana Fab La'olamim, Vitzror Chaim Et Nishmata, Adonai Hu Nachalata, V'tanuach B'shalom Al Kol Mishkava, V'nomar Amen. I can pass out some. The Kaddish Yatom, or the Mourner's Kaddish, is the first time the family have a chance to express the morning prayer. It'll be traditionally done, theoretically, every morning, 3 times a day over the course of the year, up to 11 months, but we just choose our own custom when it comes to this. I'll invite you all to join as well, because many of us have lost people in our lives, and we certainly think of those, even around here, who have no one left to say Mourner's Kaddish for them. I'll open it with English, and I'll close it as well. And I will tell you, even if the prayer is actually written in Hebrew and Aramaic, it's not easily comprehensible, but it actually speaks in the language behind where these things are drawn from. It speaks to the idea that we might actually see those who passed away in a future life. So it is actually a prayer of mourning, not just something which is, a prayer only to God. As many of you don't know the words and won't understand them, the custom in Judaism is if you say Amen at a particular point, it's as if you've said the whole prayer. So as I go through the Mourner's Kaddish, I'll raise my hand just to say the word Amen, and I'll encourage you to join me just to capture that prayer for yourselves as well. May the love and eternal connection of our souls give us strength as we turn to recite the words hallowed by time, sanctifying the name of God. We honor the memory of Ettie Werier with the words of Kaddish Yatom, the Mourner's Prayer. So together, if you know it, Yitkadal, Yitkadash, Shemei Rabbah, B'yalma, Divrach Hirutei, B'yamlich Malchutei, B'chayechon, U'b'yomechon, U'b'chaye D'chol Beit Yisrael, B'agala U'b'zman Kariv, V'imru, Amen. Yehei Shmei Rabbah Mevarach, le'alam ulalmei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh v'yithadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shmei dugadasha brichu le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata damiran b'yalma v'imru. Amen. Yehi shlama rabba min shemaya v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru. Amen. Oseh shalom b'imromav, hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru. Amen. And I'll read the last lines in English. May there be abundant peace from heaven and life for us in Israel, to which we say, Amen. May the one who created harmony on high bring peace to us and to all Israel, to which we say, Amen. Al mekomat hava b'shalom. May Ettie come to her eternal home in peace. We're now moving to the final act here at graveside. In Jewish tradition, to shovel dirt into the grave is a mitzvah, a righteous act which we do without any hope of reward. With this act, we take on the responsibility of caring for our loved one until the very end. Our loved ones deserve to be buried by kind hands, knowing hands, and sorrowful hands. You are invited to participate in this mitzvah, a painful act. However, one born of love and compassion for those who have meant so much to us. Adonai Natan, Adonai Lakach, Yehi Shem Adonai Mevorach. With Job we have said, God you have given, God you have taken away, and blessed be the name of God. May the memory of Ettie Werier be a blessing as we mark that her essence will never leave our hearts and souls. I'll ask the family to start first and move towards the shovels, but I just want to talk about the tradition of casting earth into the grave. We're actually doing this thing as the last act of honoring Ettie on her last pieces on this, last steps on this particular world. We all may have grown up in different customs. Some people shovel once, some people shovel 3 times, some people use the back of the shovel, and some use the front. Choose the custom that works for you, and if you're uncomfortable using a shovel, simply come over and take a handful of earth and do the same thing as well. There's one thing that I'll quietly ask of you, and it's consistent with the idea of doing a mitzvah, and that's that when you finish with your shovel, put it back down and let somebody else pick it up. If you give the shovel to somebody else, they're taking it on as an obligation, not a personal act of love. Okay, so just create that space between the two. When you pick up the shovel, make it your journey, your kavanah, your intention to honor Ettie on her passing into the next world. By the way, please stay away from this side. You notice there's already a problem I was warned beforehand. So stay away from the left side and just do your work on these sides or in the back. Thank you. There's shovels on both sides. You feel free to come around this way as well. Work both sides. No, the shovels are there. You have to grab them. So yeah, thanks.
Hello. Oh, hi.